Our guest today is a best-selling author from Texas whose most recent book, Fireproof Happiness, Extinguishing Anxiety, and Igniting Hope, made it as the book of the month at Online Book Club in December 2023. His name is Dr. Randy Ross, and Fireproof Happiness is a book preaching hope in its entirety, what it is, how you can have it, and why you should have it. And today we're going to be asking him some crucial questions about how applicable the advice he gives in this book is in real life, and other things you are going to benefit from. Stay with us. Hello, Dr. Ross. Welcome to Online Book Club. We are excited to have you here.
Thank you for allowing me to join you and be able to share with your listening audience.
I want to start by saying I really enjoyed listening to your book. I had to grab my pen and my jotter because there was just so much wisdom to take from it.
And I'm glad that you found it helpful. And the whole reason that we wrote the book was that people might be able to find some practical wisdom that they could apply to life to make life better. So I'm glad that you found it to be a good read.
Before we get into the book, I want to ask you this. As an ardent preacher and believer in hope, why do you think some people lose hope and give up easily?
It's an interesting question. I think that a lot has happened in our world over the last several years. There's a term that was used after the Cold War ended. And a lot of people use this acronym to describe world conditions, and it was VUCA. Everybody described it as a VUCA world. VUCA stood for volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. And I think in our post-COVID world, there has been a lot of stress. There's been a lot of anxiety. There's been a lot of uncertainty. There have been people who've been wrestling to make sense of world conditions, everything from changing economic climate to the challenges that COVID produced in relationships. And I think that there is a higher level of anxiety. There is a higher level of depression than we've experienced before in psychological circles. And I think some people are not equipped with the right tools and the right principles to apply to work through difficult times. But challenges and difficulties are a part of life. I mean, it's what makes life fun. It's what makes life adventuresome. It makes it challenging, no doubt. But at the same time, how we navigate and how we negotiate those challenges that come our way is really what makes a difference. And I think that people probably are not equipped with the necessary knowledge to know how to get through difficult times. And so that's why I wanted to write a book and talk about, practical things that people can do to elevate their hope in their pursuit of happiness.
Okay, yeah, but how does one get equipped with hope?
Well, one of the things we talk about in the book are what we call the buoyancy beliefs of hope. In other words, what are some things that are necessary that you have to be able to apply to keep your head above water when the storm begins to surge? And if you recall, there are four basic principles that are foundational for hope. The first one is positivity. In other words, you have to have this deep-seated conviction that you have to believe that tomorrow can be better, no matter how difficult today may be. That's the first thing, positivity. Now, we may talk about this in a minute, but positivity is not enough. Optimism is not enough to get you through the most challenging times of life, but it starts there. I like to say that positivity is the foundation upon which you build a skyscraper of hope. So it begins with positivity, but it has to go beyond that. The second principle, or the second buoyancy belief, if you want to call it that, is what we call responsibility. And that says that I'm not a victim of circumstances, but I have a say in how my life unfolds. In other words, I'm not a passive character in life. Life is not forced upon me. I get to write the next chapter of my life. I'm an active actor. I'm a participant in this. And I do have the responsibility because there are a lot of things in my world I can't control. I mean, I can't control the weather. I can't control the economy. I can't control even how people are going to respond, but I can control myself. I can control my emotions. I can control my response to what happens around me. And so I have to take that active responsibility to control those things over which I have an impact. And that's the second principle. The third principle is the principle of agility, which just simply says that there's not one single way to get to any desired destination, but there are different paths that you can take. There are different avenues. If one path is blocked, you can take another. If multiple paths are blocked, you can re-goal and create a new destination, but you have the choice to be creative and to join with others in a collaborative opportunity to seek new ways to achieve a particular objective or end. And then the last one, I think that's important, the 4 buoyancy beliefs, is embracing your reality. So you have to identify and understand and fully acknowledge that there are going to be obstacles, there are going to be challenges, but it's okay. It's part of the process. And your reality just means that you understand the challenges that are unique to you, but you also understand the opportunities. And so if you understand those 4 buoyancy beliefs, positivity, responsibility, agility, and your reality, if you embrace all of that, then you're well on your way to being equipped with some of the understanding of the principles. And then you just have to add the practices that will help you elevate your hope.
Well, a lot of people believe that self-help books are just beautiful words that are not quite practical. You know, someone going through a bad time could pick up your book, read it, and take a look at your life and think, well, it's easy to write a book preaching hope when you have such a beautiful life. So yeah, what makes Fireproof Happiness different from other self-help books, and what would you say to such a person?
Well, it's a good observation that you make, because I think that a lot of people believe that self-help books are maybe a lot of platitudes or just frothy bits of information that really are not that helpful. And I recognize that. One of the chapters in the book, we talk about that very fact, that in times of desperation, in times of warfare, that platitudes and posters are not sufficient to sustain the human spirit. And so, you know, platitudes and cheap sayings aren't worth very much when you're facing very difficult times. But I think that when you're talking about the common thread that unifies all of humanity, suffering is at the heart of that. All of us, at one time or another in our lives, have to go through hardship. It's part of the human experience. It's what makes us human. We all, if you scratch beneath the surface, everyone has their own unique set of blend of challenges that they have to face. Now, granted, some are much more extreme than others. Some challenges that some people face, you know, are much more in the realm of extraordinary opportunities to manifest the human spirit. And we talk about some of those in the book. If you recall, we talked about Viktor Frankl. Viktor Frankl is one of my all-time heroes. He was a Jewish man, actually a psychologist, a neuroscientist in Germany that was taken prisoner in a concentration camp. He was originally from Austria, but he was taken prisoner in a concentration camp back during World War II, and all of his worldly possessions were taken away. All of his family members were killed in the gas chambers of Auschwitz. Everything he knew in life was turned upside down, and all of his liberties were stripped away from him. But he endured the atrocities of the Nazi concentration camp, and he came out on the other side. He wrote a book called Man's Search for Meaning. And it's a powerful, powerful dissertation that basically expresses the simple idea that everything in life can be stripped away from you, except one thing, and that's the power of your choice. that no one can take away from you your ability to choose how you will respond to life's hardships. Whether you will falter and fail or whether you will flourish, that's your choice. And so I think that whether you consider someone's challenges minimal or minor, or whether they are extraordinarily difficult, it doesn't really matter. Suffering and disappointment and disillusion and loss are a part of the human experience for everyone. So I think that the secret, the key to happiness is how do we take charge of our inner world so that we can confront and combat and face and embrace anything that's happening in our outer world. And that's the secret to true happiness. Happiness is not a matter of what other people can provide or the lack of challenging circumstances. Happiness is how we navigate and negotiate the difficulties of life, and through that come out on the other side with a clear vision of how we can make a positive impact on the world and how we can maintain our own spirit during that process.
Your response just reminded me of a quote from your book. I think it goes, hopeful people know that what happens in them is greater than what happens around them. Yeah, and I think that's a very strong message. Okay, well, you made a statement in your book. You said hope is not equal to optimism, and you advised your readers to strive towards hope and not optimism. So I would like to know, what exactly is the difference?
They do look similar, and I think there's a lot of overlap between the two. But as I mentioned a little earlier, positivity is this idea that tomorrow can be brighter, no matter how bleak today may be. And optimism, particularly if you're looking at the work of Dr. Martin Seligman from the University of Pennsylvania, the School of Optimism and Positive Psychology, there is a lot of good work being done around that field. But I think the thing that sets hope apart from optimism is this idea of assuming personal responsibility for your inner world and then being able to demonstrate the agility to change and morph and set new goals when necessary. And then the embracing your own personal reality. I think that's what sets optimism apart from hope. Hope is a dynamic motivational system that's tied to inspirational goal setting. While optimism is an attitude, a mindset that you bring to the equation, I believe that hope is actually a framework and a structure, meaning that hope entails the ability to craft and create a preferred future, a desired destination, and then take the steps that are necessary to get there. So when we're talking about hope, one of the things that sometimes is helpful is to sort of break down the various components of hope. And in the book, we talk about the 4 components of hope. The work of hope, which is actually the goal setting itself. Where do you want to go? Who do you want to become? What do you want to do? That's the work of hope. But then there's the will of hope, and the will is the heart. It's the visceral activity. It's the passion, the enthusiasm. It's the drive and the motivation behind the work. That's the will. So if you wanted to think about it this way, if the work is the academic or the intellectual part, let's just call it the head, then the will is the heart, right? The burning in the belly, the desire to make it happen. And then the tactical part is what we call the way. And the way is, how are you going to get it done? When? How? Where? And then all of that triangle of the work, the will, and the way is encompassed by the with. And by with, we mean the community, the people that you choose to have on your team that will support you in that endeavor. And so if you think about hope holistically, it is a systemic approach to the idea of goal setting in a way that's inspirational and embraces a realistic pursuit of the process. Sometimes I think hope goes far beyond just optimism, because optimism as a mindset or an attitude that you bring is absolutely essential, but there's not always the system or the steps necessary to provide the substance. And I think if you understand and embrace hope, you have not only the framework, but you have the actionable steps to get there.
So optimism is just thoughts and hope is thoughts backed with action.
I like that. Yeah, hope is a system. It's a dynamic motivational system, and it's tied to inspirational goal setting.
Okay, let's explore a quote from your book. It says, "Tough times reveal what good times conceal." Is that something you learned from your observations in real life, or is this a theory you came up with after much thought?
The tough times reveal.
Yeah.
I love that statement because it's so very true. I mean, when we encounter tough times, they reveal our character. You know, there are a lot of things that happen when life is good, when you have no problems, when everything is going your way. Life is easy, and it doesn't really show what you're made of. It doesn't show the substance of your character. We just have a tendency to coast along through life. Sailing is clear and it's easy. But when tough times come along, all of a sudden you begin to see what you're really made of. You know, how deep does your character go? Because tough times, they expose our weaknesses and they expose our shortcomings. Tough times, they illuminate both our strengths and our shortcomings and show our deficiencies. And so I like to say that creativity is what you get when all other options are taken off of the table. And so tough times take a lot of options off the table. There are a lot of things that the challenging times remove from the equation. And when that happens, then we get to see just exactly how creative, how hopeful we are, and how much agility can we demonstrate, either to circumvent the obstacles that are in our way and chart a course to that desired destination, or when necessary to re-goal and choose a different destination altogether. And so it's a really good statement, you know, that tough times reveal what good times conceal. And I think that it's also the beginning of wisdom, to be quite frank, is that people that I see whose lives are not filled with obstacles and challenges are not as fruitful, they're not as productive, that people who faced and encountered and overcome obstacles are the ones that not only do I admire them, but I think that they've developed the emotional fortitude and the strength of character to combat whatever challenges may come their way. And I find them to be far more inspirational than those who've had an otherwise fairly easy and simple existence.
Okay, I would really love to hear the answer to this next question. There's a saying that goes, there is a time for everything. So I want to know, when should a person stop hoping? When should a person accept that all is lost and move on?
Well, you sort of coined a phrase from Ecclesiastes, right? There's a time for everything in life. A time to give life, a time for death, a time to begin, a time to end. And I believe that's very much true. But when it comes to hope, I don't think there's ever a time to give up hope. I don't think there's ever a time to stop hoping. Now I will say this. We talked about embracing reality. There are times that we have to sit back and honestly assess the situation. And we might have to say, you know, is the cost to continue to pursue this endeavor more than I'm willing to pay? Is it too costly, either emotionally or relationally or financially? And I think sometimes an endeavor, there are times, you know, that you begin to write a chapter, and there are times that you end a chapter. There are times that you start an endeavor, and there are times that you end an endeavor. But here's what I would say. Even when you end an endeavor, hope should still be present, because sometimes ending the endeavor is the result of hope because you see a different path that you need to take. And so I would say there's never a time to quit hoping. And there's never a time that I would accept that all is lost. Because just because this particular pursuit may not come to fruition, just because my investment in that pursuit may somewhat be delayed or lost, it doesn't mean that I'm lost. I still have control over my destiny. And so I can still hope, and I can still dream, and I can still believe that tomorrow is going to be brighter, even if what I'm involved in today is not working out, if it's not successful. So there's never a time to give up hope. I think when the human spirit is devoid of hope, then life is lost. I'll tell you a quick story. And we write about this in the book, but it's about Admiral Stockdale, James Stockdale. And James Stockdale was the highest ranking United States naval officer to ever be taken prisoner in a Vietnam camp. And he writes about that experience afterwards. He actually wrote about it in a book by Jim Collins called Good to Great. You may be familiar with Good to Great. But Jim Collins asked Admiral Stockdale, he said, how did you survive the camp? And he said, well, two things. Number one, hope. You had to have hope and this belief that in the end you would persevere. But at the same time, it had to be combined with the ability to have the discipline to embrace reality no matter how harsh it may be. And Jim Collins said, well, so tell me, who didn't survive the camp? And Admiral Stockdale said, oh, that's easy. It's the people who only had hope. And he said, because they would say, by Christmas, we'll be out. But Christmas would come and Christmas would go, and there'd be no change, and they would still be in the camp. And then they would say, oh, by Easter, we'll be out. But Easter would come and Easter would go. And they said, by Thanksgiving, we will be out. And Thanksgiving would come and Thanksgiving would go. And he said, the people who only had hope, and he was using hope not in the sense that we understand it, but in the hope of wishful thinking, they are the ones that lost life because they had no hope. So I think hope, if you understand it in its entirety, embraces the positivity to believe that you'll persevere, but it has to be combined with the discipline of recognizing reality and embracing reality no matter how harsh it may be. So do you ever give up hope? No, because that's when life is lost. You always hope. But there may be times that you say, the cost to pursue this is too great to continue it. So I'm going to demonstrate agility. I'm going to alter course. I'm going to re-goal. I'm going to find a new destination. And I'm going to continue to have hope, but I'm going to move in a different direction.
All right, so letting go isn't the same as giving up hope. We have exhausted our questions. So what is the one thing you want readers to go home with? If they take nothing else from your book, what is the one thing they should always remember?
The power of hope. Because hope is the foundation for happiness, for health, for longevity, for productivity. Now, the research is very clear, Chinelo. The research talks about the fact that hope builds resilience into people, that it makes them more productive in what they do, that they have more energy in what they do when they're hopeful. If you say, I'm hopeless about that project, what you're saying is you give up. You don't see any way that it's going to happen. But when you're hope-filled, then you're energetic and you bring more to the equation. And that helps relationships, it helps work, it helps productivity, it helps when in your terms of your own personal, emotional, and physical well-being, and it leads to a longer and happier life. And so the power of hope is profound, and I just encourage everybody to either pick up a copy of the book or research hope and figure out how you can instill more hope into your personal life, because it will make you more resilient and it will make you definitely happier in your life pursuits.
All right, thank you so much, Dr. Ross. I got a lot from this interview, and I'm pretty sure our viewers got a lot from it too. So yeah, thank you very much.
It is my pleasure, and thank you for taking the time to interview me, and I wish you all the best in your every endeavor.
All right, we have come to the end of our interview with Dr. Randy Ross. The link to Fireproof Happiness, Extinguishing Anxiety, and Igniting Hope is in the description, so go get your copy. Do not forget to like and subscribe. See you next time. Bye.